Cardano seems to focus on engineering in parallel. IOHK and EMURGO, Rust and Haskell, Yoroi and Daedalus, and so on. How do you think these projects have complemented each other?
Well, when you build something, it's incredibly important to avoid a monoculture from forming. It's very easy for people to rest on their laurels and think that at whatever pace they're working, whatever innovation they're doing, that's good enough, it's sufficiently fast. What you need to do when you're in a leadership position of a project that is in a very competitive space is you need to create pressure. You need to create situations where people have benchmarks that they can compare their own performance and try to always get a little bit better. That's why competitive sports like the Olympics, every time the Olympics come around, you see that people are always breaking records. So similarly, we wanted to make sure that we didn't form a monoculture, that we wanted to have multiple implementations, multiple teams, multiple companies, and every single one of them was always trying to push the envelope a little bit. And so I think they're very complementary, and they also force us to discuss reasonable specifications. So it's easy when you implement a cryptocurrency to say that the code is the spec. This is effectively Bitcoin. You say, well, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the reference client. With Ethereum, the first thing we did there is we actually had multiple implementations. We had Geth and Parity and so forth. And so it kind of forced the Ethereum community to consolidate to something more abstract. And along that same token, it's the same situation for Cardano. We have a Rust spec, a Rust implementation and a Haskell implementation. So this forces us to have agreement at the specification level. And it's the same with having partners like Yoroi. We have to make sure whatever changes we make, Yoroi is interoperable and compatible with that. So it forces us to be more disciplined in our engineering and in our documentation, and ultimately make sure that we have abstractions that hold, and they hold for everyone, not just for us.
A lot of our community is on social media. What are some recent community-driven initiatives that caught your attention?
Well, I think the mother of all initiatives was when we had the trouble with the Cardano Foundation, and we saw autonomously and sporadically, suddenly the Cardano watchdogs, the guardians of Cardano, just emerge out of the ether. And this was a group of people who came from all over Europe and all over the world, and they said, we care about this project so much so we're willing to sacrifice our surplus weekends and time to go and do a deep investigation and create social pressure for Michael Parsons to step aside. So that's an example of where there's a very negative event, an event where we're very frustrated and one of the parties wasn't quite doing its job, where the community was able to rise up and assist the project to get to where it needs to go. Now along that same token, now that Parsons has gone, we've seen that the guardians of Cardano have turned into watchdogs, and they're actually making recommendations about better governance systems and better ways of managing the ecosystem. So that's one of just, I'd say, several good projects that we've seen that have been community-led, where they've just spontaneously come together. Another that we've started, but by no means are going to lead, is this concept of a stake pool task force. So we're going to have very soon staking in Cardano. And what we've noticed is that there's just a huge amount of questions that keep coming up about, well, what are the returns, and how do I set up a stake pool, and how do I register it, and how do people delegate to me, and what does this even mean? And instead of trying to re-answer the same questions over and over and over again and dispel myths and misconceptions, it would be better to have the community ask a consolidated large set of questions and for us to come together and answer all of them in one place, create infographics and other materials to assist in that. So it's really nice that we have such a tight partnership with our community. We're able to leverage them, and when we ask them to do something, like for example, go create the stake pool task force, we in just a week and a half have gotten over 1,000 people sign up for that. Yeah. And that's just crazy that random people over the internet are willing to sacrifice their weekends to go and do cool things uncompensated to help make the ecosystem better.
Yeah. Why is it important for countries and people to come together globally to solve problems outside of our own?
Because no problem is in isolation. If a country has an issue or a group of people have an issue, that's never just going to stay with them. People immigrate, people move, environmental concerns are global in nature, economic problems of one country can cascade and become the economic problems of other countries. For example, the United States, we kind of blew up the world financial market with the 2008 financial crisis, and that was felt everywhere. It was felt in Iceland, it was felt in Scotland, felt in China. The problems of my neighbor are my problem, and my problems are his problem. And so it's incredibly important for us as a global community to start thinking about how do we build governance systems and how do we build protocols that allow all of us to come together and collectively solve each other's problems in a way that benefits everyone. And that's the point of the cryptocurrency revolution and the blockchain revolution, is about giving us much better tools for us to make decisions and much better tools for us to build great stable marketplaces so that we can collectively solve big problems like climate change or war, famine, and disease and so forth, which if we don't solve will inevitably cause global problems for everyone and really make the quality of our lives worse.
Japanese tidying expert Marie Kondo has brought organization to the forefront of everyone's minds. Do you like to keep your surroundings tidy, or do you work best around clutter?
When I had an office and I did mathematics years ago, I had a very messy office, and it was always stacked with papers to grade or documents to read, various ideas sprawled out on usually yellow pads. In fact, I was pretty notorious for having hundreds of half-filled yellow pads and things written, and somehow I was always able to find everything because I was young and I thought very quickly. As I've gotten fat and old and traveled too much, I've noticed that my attention to detail has started to decline a bit. And so I'd say that order is a tool of the older that we start embracing when we realize that we're not quite as sharp and we don't think as fast as we used to. So I've tried very hard to start organizing my surroundings and embrace better management systems. But I really envy the past where I was able to live in organized chaos and somehow it made sense to me.
I wanted to let you know about a recent social media trend, the hashtag 10-year challenge. You are supposed to put up a picture of yourself from 10 years ago and compare it with a present day picture. Would you be willing to share a picture with the community from 10 years ago, around 2009? What were you doing around that time?
I was studying mathematics and I looked a lot younger. I was a lot happier. I didn't weigh as much. I used to jog every day. Those were good days. I was a lot more popular with the women. I'll tweet the 10-year challenge at some point. I think they're doing the 10-year challenge for face recognition. That's what the conspiracy theorists are saying.
Okay. What kind of products, services, and projects would you like to see from EMURGO, based on past successes such as Yoroi and EMURGO's education partnerships?
EMURGO, well, first with Yoroi is an ecosystem play. I mean, it's this concept of saying that people are inevitably going to issue their own assets, and inevitably people are going to be wanting experiences like a good developer experience, a good experience to deploy dApps. So it's really important to have a great place for partners to be able to have their tokens live, to have their dApps live and define new dApps, kind of like the Chrome Web Store, and a good environment to develop dApps within. So if EMURGO continues their just amazing work that they've been doing with Yoroi over an arc of time, several months to a year or two, I think they can build a very compelling ecosystem that is much better and comprehensive than the ecosystem that Consensus has constructed for Ethereum. So I would hope that they continue that thread. In addition, I think it is important to have a global dialogue about solving real problems. There's a lot of these McKinsey reports and these other things floating around where people are saying, are you using blockchain or not, or are you using smart contracts or not? I think that's entirely the wrong question to ask. You didn't in 2005 go around and start asking companies, are you guys using cell phone applications? You'd just be crazy to ask that question because the iPhone wasn't out yet. Nobody really got why cell phone apps were important. So I think instead it's important to ask foundational questions about industry verticals like agricultural technology or supply chain management and say, what problems are you facing? What do you want to solve? Where's the world going? Like every city is having to adjust its infrastructure for autonomous vehicles. So what does that actually mean to a city? How is it going to change it? We really want to reduce carbon production. We really want to increase biodiversity. We really want to have fair trade and sustainable farming practices. So effectively, what do these things mean for these merchants, and how do we build great solutions for them? And I would hope that that's the discussions that end up being held, and those are the discussions that end up maturing into real-life products. Because then it's not, hey, can you adopt blockchain? That's like saying, can you adopt internet, or can you adopt a cell phone app? It's like, it's a meaningless statement. It's more about, can you adopt some new technology that allows you to better solve the problems that you have and better serve the needs of your customer? So I would really hope that EMURGO develops some core competency and works with partners and great young entrepreneurs. Like, for example, I know that EMURGO recently launched a program in New York for entrepreneurs, and they have one cohort that's coming through, and I forget what it is, D-Labs or something? Yeah, and that's just great because what that's going to do is bring a lot of life and problem-solving interest where people have a fiduciary obligation to actually go and do something, and they're young enough, they're willing to work themselves to death to try it, and they're crazy enough to think that blockchain might actually be the solution for those particular problems. So I'd love to see more of that, and as long as you can just keep that flow into the system, that our best days are ahead of us.
That's all I have for you, Mr. Hoskinson.
Okay, this was a lot of fun.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I was studying mathematics, and I looked a lot younger. I was a lot happier. I didn't weigh as much. I used to jog every day. Those were good days. You know, I was a lot more popular with the women. Yeah, I'll tweet the 10-year challenge at some point.